When the surface opened in the training lake and the radio crackled submerged contact, 3 soldiers froze, and I understood that whatever was under the water didn't obey manuals, sights, or fear. They called it Echo Lake, a shallow body of water, reed-covered shores, and a metal pier that creaked when the breeze hit it at an angle within the testing area of a forgotten base hidden between pine trees and swamps in the southern United States. It was exercise night, thermal sights warming up, radios whispering codes, and the water a black mirror, windless, dotted with insects buzzing with the electric feeling that precedes an error. The team, 4 recruits and 2 instructors, carried angled flashlights and rescue lines. The mission was simple: cross the lake by swimming, anchor the rope, set up an improvised zip line, time it, learn to obey the clock of another element. I was on the shore, clipboard in hand, my eyes trained on what didn't match the scene. The first sign was absence. The frogs stopped croaking at once. The buzzing dissolved into a vacuum, and Carter's thermal sensor showed an oblong hole in the cold water. Not heat, but the absence of heat, as if the lake had swallowed a piece of itself to hold its breath. "Echo confirm thermal variation?" I asked on the radio, trying to keep my voice steady. "Negative, probably a big fish," replied Sergeant Doyle, more to reassure than out of certainty. "Big fish don't make V-shaped ripples like that." The film of the lake parted in a perfect, short, calculated triangle, closing like a wound that didn't want a story. "Entering," Ramirez said, chest in the cold, the blade of water rising up to his neck. 2 strokes, and the lake responded. First, a current that had no reason. Then, a touch on his ankle, cold as metal, that didn't hurt, and for that very reason, taught him. "Something on my—" Ramirez started, and the rest turned into a bubble. The safety line tightened, but not in a straight line. It twisted in a spiral, drawing a lazy S in the moon's reflection, as if signing its name. "Hold! Hold!" we shouted in unison, but the force pressing didn't respect human panic. What followed the manuals called constriction, but the name doesn't capture the method. The body became hungry for air in time with the heartbeat, and each attempt to inhale became a signal for the next squeeze. "Cut the light," I ordered, and the sights filled with nothing. Those who can't see invent fewer mistakes. Doyle threw the rescue loop, thick sisal, aiming for the V behind the head. If head was something we could see. We didn't. We felt. The rope found something firm just an inch below the surface, an invisible step of muscle and certainty. On 3, and 3 came with the water trying to take the shore with it. The head broke the surface for a fraction, olive green stained, dark eye measuring without hurry, tongue tasting fear as one might read orders. Anaconda. The word crossed my mind like a silent shot. It shouldn't have been there, not that big, not in that lake. Explanations are toys for later. The now was about saving people. "Diagonal!" Doyle shouted, and we pulled sideways, stealing from the thing the watery ground that gives authority to its embrace. Ramirez emerged half an inch, eyes wide, no sound, and it was then that the tail struck. Not a blow of bone, of geography. The shore gave way, the pier cried metal, and the lake turned into too small a room for everyone. "Cut the line!" I screamed at Quinn, who was already brandishing her knife. She hesitated that honest second of someone who knows that without the line, only the arm separates a comrade from the bottom. "On my cut," I said, and threw the rescue hook behind the loop, locking it in a height the thing couldn't command. Quinn cut, the world loosened by a finger. That was enough. Ramirez pulled in air like signing life, and the water responded, twisting inside itself, a thunder without sky. The head disappeared, the rope screamed pain in the palm, and the lake gave back only leaves, as if it had done a favor, not given a warning. Everyone back, and we retreated together, no running, no hero, as one does when leaving the house of someone who has made it clear they still own the clock in that room. The report that would come later would ask questions the night didn't want to answer. What mattered was counting 6 breathing while standing. If the cold water rose up the neck just from imagining the scene, subscribe now and activate notifications. The next story will come quietly, like the thing that moves the lake without making waves. Sergeant Doyle ordered the perimeter closed, white light switched off, and any loose metal collected because nervous noise becomes an invitation when the water decides to set the pace, and protocol exists to prevent a loose instinct from turning a scare into a bad headline. Quinn took the edge with the loop already set and the quick strop from the rescue kit nearby, not to capture, but to lift the head and steal from the thing the ground of water, the same logic used in swiftwater rescue training when there's no way to enter from below without the water winning by method. The radio order was as clear as cold steel. Isolate, assess, do not pursue, and prepare an incident report with time, weather, and coordinates, because personnel recovery begins on the shore, not in an open chest, and a lesson learned must turn into a line in the manual, so the next shift doesn't pay in blood what was already paid in fear. Ramirez, wrapped in a thermal blanket, was shaking less from the cold than from his body returning to its own rhythm, and kept repeating, "No eyes, just wait," a perfect summary of what large constrictors do when the house is water and the victim becomes the clock. We swept with infrared light, not to hunt but to confirm the absence of heat where the cold hole still floated, and the screen returned thermal silence enough to order a coordinated withdrawal, with the mobile light post retreating step by step. No one facing away, no one alone, everyone repeating the survival checklist like a prayer. At the forward post, the PR officer turned chaos into task. Record, consolidate, debrief, adapt, the chain that keeps people alive when chance tries to become habit. The same cycle the recovery guidelines demand be followed, so the unit learns today what will save them tomorrow. At midnight, when the frog started croaking again and the surface stopped inventing triangles, the base made the hard, obvious decision. No new immersion, no bravado, no evidence, just cones, tape, and the word that saves more than ammo on the wrong night: distance. It was decided that the next day divers would not enter, because this manual isn't for hunting dives, but for rescue, and rescue knows how to refuse a scenario that favors the wrong element, even when curiosity boils over the radio. The report went up with the phrase that made everyone sleep a little less badly. 6 out of 6, no serious injuries, lessons incorporated into the SOP by dawn, and, between the lines, the certainty that not every encounter requires explanation. Some just require that the edge be redrawn with tape and humility. The debriefing began before coffee, a cold room, maps on the walls, and a projector emitting thermal silence where there should have been fish, and each voice entered the report as a missing piece to ensure the story wouldn't turn into a hallway legend. Quinn described the tension of the loop settling into a firm void an inch below the surface, the sensation of a muscle step that rescue protocols know without naming, and the instructor noted it as an applicable technique: lift, diagonal, remove, never lock in a straight line against what makes water the very ground. Ramirez reported the squeeze in beats, not pain but air rationed by method, confirming the rule no one likes to practice: break the breath into short portions to scramble the constrictor's clock while the team steals height and time. Doyle standardized the changes: expanded perimeter, indirect lighting, no nighttime swimming in lakes without prior thermal scanning, and quick strop mandatory on the edge whenever there's transposition, with a line in an environment with dense aquatic vegetation, converting successful improvisation into a procedure that saves on scale. The operations officer pieced the SOP together, adding an annex: large constrictors in bodies of water, immediate response. And the best part of the annex was what he prohibited: pursuit, amateur capture, and returning to get a better look, exchanging curiosity for mission continuity. At the bottom was the sentence that rarely appears in manuals, but should. When the element has an absolute advantage, the victory is to come out intact and return with the protocol corrected. In the afternoon, the experts released buoys with sensors, and the lake gave back only the wind, 2 curious fish, and the long shadow of an alligator far enough to avoid any honest confusion, leaving the cold hole as a technical memory and a personal haunting, which is the right place to keep what doesn't want to become a repeated mistake. The perimeter became tape and a sign, not out of fear but out of respect, and the field instruction was rewritten in simple letters. The edge is not a shortcut, a triangle in the water is not an ornament, and the silence of frogs commands more than loud bravery. That night, the new class heard the story without exaggeration, with the 3 words that keep people alive in environments that don't need explanation: distance, angle, retreat. We never knew what, how, or why, and the final report ended with anomalous event not replicated, a phrase that seems vague but in the real world means we learned enough without paying again, and sometimes that's all you can ask from a lake that decides to teach. On the pier, someone screwed a discreet notice, where only those who need to read it will. If the water opens in a V, don't argue, change plans. A wooden summary of what the manual, with all its pomp, took 20 pages to say. And for those who stayed until the end of this story, there's a simple protocol for staying alive here. Subscribe now and activate notifications. The next story will come quietly, like the thing that moves the surface without leaving visible waves.